Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and school. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today, we are covering Proverbs chapters 8 through 11.
Yeah, we could have done 9 through 11 if we were less lazy last week.
Well, for next week, we are going to be finishing this one short section that we are starting today, the Proverbs of Solomon. We're going to be finishing that next week.
Well, this week, because the introductory Proverbs, right, are the first 9 chapters, we're going to be finishing that halfway through the broadcast today.
Yeah. And also, Proverbs 8, that we'll be covering first today, has been very influential within the history of Christology. And there is a specific verse in there, 8:22. You'll see why. Yeah.
I'm looking ahead.
What, you're looking ahead? That is rude.
I know, blasphemous.
That you can't just look ahead.
No, I can't. But I have the King James version of the Bible in front of me.
I have the English Standard Version.
We also have Robert Alter's translation and commentary of the Hebrew Bible.
We also have the Holy Scriptures, according to some Jews, and the New King James Version.
As well as Eerdmans' commentary.
Yes,
and
Eerdmans' commentary.
Oxford Companion of the Bible.
Yes, good old Oxford Companion. So Eerdmans' commentary, and we also have our good friend here, Ball.
Yes.
Here he is.
There he is. Ball.
Everyone say hi to Ball. Here he is.
Yep. Say hi.
Our friend.
Offer your sacrifices.
Yes, please offer sacrifices to Ball.
And please no children through the fire, but if you have to.
If you have to, I mean, we can't really stop you. We wouldn't want to if you have to.
There you go. What was his name? Was that Jethro?
Manasseh did his children.
Manasseh.
Yeah, he did his children through the fire. And then there was another guy who did the same thing.
Yeah.
And then Jephthah is probably who you're thinking.
Jephthah, yeah.
Yes, and
yeah.
Jephthah actually, he sacrificed his daughter. It wasn't through the fire, he just sacrificed his daughter.
Right. He sacrificed the daughter. But the through the fire thing was a general term, a polemic against child sacrifice, right?
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, why don't we hop into it? Chapter 8. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of high places, by the way in the places of the paths.
So, first of all, this proverb is probably the most complex of all the proverbs, at least according to Eerdmans. But at the top of the heights on the way, the figure of Lady Wisdom positions herself up above, evidently in a variety of places, where she can be widely heard down below, and she stands by the crossroads and at the entrance of the city, and that's in verse 3, where there are many passerby. Yeah, there are many passerby who will hear her voice. The implication is that wisdom is not hidden or esoteric, but something plainly accessible. In the metaphor used here, proclaimed to all.
Yes. Well, also, it's a strange word choice because they say high places in the King James Version of the Bible, which is translated differently there. But, it would be a completely different implication between on high and high places.
Right, because there's I don't know what the specific Hebrew word here is, but if it was... I feel like if it were the same word as high places, we'd probably get a different translation in these readings. Like the ESV says on the heights. And very similarly, so does Alter with at the top of the heights.
I'm going to see what the Jews say.
Oh, all right then.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, these Jews. High places.
They say high places. Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I thought we were supposed to get rid of, a bunch.
Well, yeah. So I'm guessing the reason for the other translation is either because it's a different word or because of another meaning for the term that just meant literally a high place.
Right. She crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Obviously, because you're supposed to inscribe the words of the Lord on your posts and on your gates. So wisdom personified is present wherever those inscriptions are found, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips.
Good old abominations.
That's a terrible argument, by the way. When I open my mouth, the right things will come out because I will be speaking the truth.
Words.
And what it means to be speaking the truth is for the right things to come out of your mouth. But if you're using speaking the truth as the justification for why what you're saying is right, then it's tautological.
Yeah.
I was just going to say it was a tautology. Hey, good. There you go.
Yes.
It's a pretty gross one, too.
Yeah, it is. For all the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. Receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. If this is used by Christians, I'm assuming that they say that that's related to Judas.
Take my reproof rather than silver, and knowledge is choicer than fine gold. Sadly, there is no actual commentary on that.
You know, because he's Jewish, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
Because he doesn't have the New Testament, and he
Right.
calls it the Hebrew Bible,
Sure.
right?
Which is a term that's just kind of used in scholarship now to be the Tanakh.
It'd be useful to have a Christian commentary.
I mean, yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Anyways, for wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I assume that rubies is like a generic gem term and is translated differently. They've done that in the past.
I mean,
Definitely.
Altar had rubies as well. And in the ESV, it does say jewels. But I guess the overall point of this entire section is that, wisdom is pretty much the best thing you could possibly get. It's better than this gold, these damn material things. No, this is knowledge we're talking about.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. I haven't heard the term arrogancy in a long time.
Froward mouth.
Yeah, they say that a lot.
They do, and froward, like, head or forehead or something. Is that just folded or?
A froward mouth.
Yeah.
So
Like a
that's verse
frown?
13, right?
Yeah, well, that is verse 13.
Okay. Perverse speech, literally a mouth of perversities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength.
I am understanding. That's good.
Oh, I am understanding, yeah. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice.
So there is a good amount of commentary on this from Alter. Through me kings reign. Here begins a new emphasis about the importance of wisdom, prepared for by the mention of might at the end of the previous line. Wisdom is a crucial prerequisite for statecraft, and only through it are rulers able to exercise effective governance, which is, it would make sense, but from the amount of polemics that we've had against certain kings and how unwise they were, I mean, this would make sense, in the context of someone like Solomon.
Right.
But in the cases of other kings, it would just be weird because there were some that were just so awful.
Well, would it make sense in the context of Solomon, though? One would think that Solomon, being a son of David, would have been raised with full knowledge of Saul's kingship and all the things that went on there.
Yes, but because after David, it could be argued that this is the start of the kingdom. Like this is where it actually counts.
Right.
The other one
didn't
count.
before?
Well, yeah, he was, because the thing is, Saul was a
Tried
king,
so hard.
but
Didn't even
he
matter.
wasn't like the king, if you know what I mean.
Right. But, well, let me read this next verse. By me princes rule and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. This is so different than the Psalms that we were covering, which, like, besides the royal Psalms, seem to have an almost universal polemic against royal figures and nobility. And nobility.
Yeah, we get that certainly a lot, but of course
They did have psalms of praise of kings, but they had less.
So the thing about this entire section that we are reading today is the overall point is that it is not, being rich or mighty that makes someone good. You can, like there's certain things you have to do considering your social position,
Right,
to be a better person effectively or more wise. So it doesn't like really matter how rich or poor you are. You can still be wise and good and all that stuff. So it's just weird that they use this kind of imagery. There is a good amount of commentary I want to add here from Erdman's.
It's kind of Christly, though, right? In the humbleness aspect.
Well, for not right
Obviously-
now. Right now, it is not.
It will.
It gets more humble. Yeah.
It gets very humble. Okay.
Yeah, the previous,
Not so much.
like, all of the things that I say are correct. That's not very humble.
I don't know.
So, a note here from Erdman's. The figure is clearly a literary personification, but its origins and associations are undoubtedly more than simply artistic and imaginative. The portrait draws heavily on traditional features of a goddess of wisdom who stands beside the highest deity as a consort and advisor. So most scholars have recognized once we get to it, 8:22 through 31, the core of an older poem, or at least major elements of popular religious themes. These concern a member of the divine court of the kind that is portrayed in all the major polytheistic traditions of Egypt and Mesopotamia, even the theistic traditions of Egypt, even the form of self-introduction and self-praise, which characterizes the style of the poem, emulates a feature of such religious poetry. Such a figure, however, is here transformed and shorn of its early polytheistic connections. Wisdom becomes not a divine consort, but instead the first creation, and that's why it gets linked to the whole Jesus thing later on, as the first creation of the one Lord God of Israel. The very title first, or chief, is the Lord's creations, of the Lord's creations, both magnifies and limits her position. So wisdom herself is not a goddess or even a divine architect, but rather the perfect prototype of the created order.
All right.
Just a little bit more on wisdom.
Yes.
Even more?
Yes.
I remember the last few episodes have been about wisdom.
It's going to be about wisdom for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, Solomon, you're really obsessed with her.
So, what do we call the author of Proverbs? Like Psalms, you can say the psalmist, right? Chronicles,
The chronicler.
the chronicler.
I have no idea.
Proverbs.
The proverber.
Yeah, we're going to get into authorship a little bit later. That can help us with the date, but I will hit on that once we get to those verses.
Of course, author.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, as we talked about in the very first episode on Proverbs, this is more likely a compilation of compilations.
Yeah. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, better than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old.
Yes, so that is verse 22. So
Is this where arguments for the pre-existence of Jesus to the birth comes from?
This is the argument about the fact that Jesus was there at the creation, so he's not like one of God's creatures. Or actually, no, this one would actually argue for him being one of God's creatures, interestingly, because it says...
part of that debate.
But so yours says possessed, right? Ultra's translation is the Lord created me at the outset of his way, the very first of his works of old. So wisdom was like the first thing. So people are like, okay, so if there's this speaker here, then it should be Jesus as the first created thing, which is really an Arian position. And by Arian,
Right.
I mean Arius, not spelled. It's spelled Arian, not Aryan. Just so we're clear.
Don't hate us, Susan. But I mean, I don't think that's defended by the text itself, right? Because this clearly is not Jesus speaking. This is a personification of wisdom that's continually presented throughout Proverbs. You would have to be totally...
What if Jesus was a girl?
Well, you would have to totally...
Okay, that's about all I could go for.
Ignore like all of the surrounding information to interpret this as being Jesus. Like, it would have to be a very selective reading of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. And also, Jonah, thanks for noting that they are, in fact, two different words on the high places thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Excellent. Because I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Although
shit.
there is quite a lot to talk about here on 822.
Okay.
So from altar, the Lord created me at the outset of his way. Although Lady Wisdom is still speaking, the section from here through verse 31 looks like a new poem, or at the very least a distinct new segment of the same poem. The speech from verse 1 through verse 21 is a celebration by Wisdom of her powers. True. Her gift of plain and accessible discourse, the preciousness of her words, her indispensability as a guide to all who govern, the material benefits she conveys to her followers. It must be said that much of the poetry of this section deploys boilerplate language, echoing quite familiar formulations or even formulas that one encounters elsewhere in Proverbs. The poem that begins with verse 22 has a cosmic framework rather than a pragmatic one. Lady Wisdom's self-celebration goes back to the role she played as God's intimate, before he launched on the works of creation. This cosmic and cosmogonic prominence of wisdom may well have provided a generative clue for the prose poem about the logos. You know, in the beginning was the word, and the word was me, and all that stuff.
Right.
Because logos, word, also, you know, logic and all that stuff.
Right.
In the first chapter of John's Gospel.
But that theology is more or less absent in many forms of Christianity today.
I mean,
Look, if we hadn't been reading about this, I would have never heard Christians use the term logos. I heard Jordan Peterson use it a few times.
well, I mean, they use it in like seminaries all the time.
They might use it in seminaries, but I've never talked to a Baptist or a Methodist or a Catholic even who uses the term logos.
They would rather
Scrap that as a cool name.
they
I've
opt
heard of it already.
they opt to just use the word, because that's in the first chapter of John's Gospel.
Right, but it's not
the Greek.
right. But what I mean is that whereas that may have been a major focus of theology at a certain point in time, I don't think it's very common for Christians to focus on that anymore. They don't really bring it up in their discussions.
If someone is talking about Christology, there's no way to get around using word or logos. There's just no way to get around it.
I don't know, man. I've talked to a lot of Christians.
Me too.
They say things like, accept the love of Jesus, or God loved you so much that he sent his only begotten son to die for your sins.
Right.
They don't say,
that's quoting.
Be convinced by the greater wisdom of the original word and logos. That's not a line of reasoning that I've seen presented by living Christians.
I mean, I am in agreement that they very seldom cite Proverbs 8:22.
Yeah.
But there were plenty of church fathers who did that, definitely. It was a crucial point in Christology.
The word has indeed fallen out of common use.
Well, sure, it's a Greek term.
Many of these.
Right.
The word logos is Greek, so that's why they opt to use the English term word.
Yeah, but not only is it a Greek term, but at least here in America, you're presented with the term very early on in life, in school, and it doesn't have anything to do with Christ. Right? Elementary school, logos, ethos, pathos. They don't mention Jesus even once.
Well, yeah, because logos is
right, because it's a different term.
Yeah,
right?
it's broader.
It's meant to mean something different.
Yeah, but in Christology, at least.
I don't know how many Christians are actually familiar with historical Christology.
I mean, there's a lot, and I'm sure if anyone out there has seen my videos on the councils or the Trinity in general, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of differing philosophies and theologies and how to understand all of this, so it can get very muddled. But either way, so further on, he created me at the outset of his way.
Yeah.
In rabbinic tradition, it was a trigger for the idea that God made the world by following the blueprint of the Torah, which pre-existed creation. And later, the Kabbalah would elaborate this notion with a theosophic apparatus. This cosmic vision, moreover, is articulated in soaring poetry that seems quite unlike the poetry of the preceding section. And then, of course, the second half of that verse, the very first of his works of old, or before his works of old. It is not entirely clear whether the poet intends this as a literal account of the order of creation, which is how the line was understood by later Jewish and Christian tradition, or whether this whole idea of the primordial presence of wisdom is a kind of mythic hyperbole to express wisdom's crucial importance in the order of things. And that would make sense too, honestly.
You know what doesn't make sense?
What's that?
The Lord possessing wisdom before creating anything.
Well, yeah, that's that translation.
Well, he
That's the
better
good
have
old
had
KJV.
some wisdom, or else he
Or
would.
even the Lord creating wisdom before he created anything else. You know why it's nonsense?
Because he would have needed wisdom.
No, because you don't just have wisdom. You have justified true beliefs about things that exist.
As far as
And
I know,
eventually that may be wisdom, it may be. It may just be a justified true belief or a bit of knowledge that you have, but you can't have wisdom without reference to anything. It doesn't make any sense.
the
I do see your point.
The metaphysical state of wisdom, like your shirt, your T-shirt. Not the one you're wearing, but the Teespring T-shirt that you made, Ruben.
Oh, yeah, the platonic form of the shirt.
Platonic form of wisdom.
Right.
Yep. Somehow they're referring to that.
So we can expand a little bit more from Erdman's on this section. We have already noted that this appears to make extensive use of widely known and popular imagery concerning wisdom on the one hand. as a goddess-like figure who intercedes for human beings, and on the other, as a divine architect and advisor among the heavenly host when the world was created. All the polytheistic features have been eliminated from Proverbs 8. Similarly, and that's not to say they've been edited out, they just weren't included. Similarly, the idea that the Lord God needed an assistant at creation has been removed. Instead, wisdom is present at creation, observing its symmetry and rejoicing in the divine accomplishment. The aim is to demonstrate that wisdom observes the order of the universe and that this displays a coherent and harmonious wholeness. Wisdom is timeless, universal, and all-embracing, affirming in poetic imagery that knowledge of her is built on critical observation of the way things are. She holds together the physical, moral, and social realms of experience. Wisdom, then, represents a class of preeminent knowledge because she belongs to a primordial supernatural realm. So this is very similar to the idea of, like, you could call it the Platonic form of wisdom.
Right.
Or you could call, okay, what's the thing in Hindu belief about this kind of is it Dharma, the playing out of Dharma, or is it Lily, or what was it called? I forget which one it was.
Well, Dharma can mean
not
different things.
prominent.
I know, sure.
Right, but let's just say Dharma. Like, some Buddhists will have problems with that.
Sure.
But let's say Tao then, right? To move it away from India.
Okay.
Makes it a little easier, right? But no, I
forget what it was, but I remember, like, there's like a specific order to the universe. Yeah.
Well, I think, before God made everything else, he needed to make somebody to congratulate him for that. No one's going to be like, wow.
It just doesn't make sense. How, okay, even supposing that this is like a divine council thing, how can anyone have knowledge of how the universe is supposed to be arranged before anything exists?
Well, God.
Right.
Yeah,
but if
presuppositionalist
if
position
that's
here.
the point, if God has that knowledge, then there's no need for a divine council, right? There's no need for a personification of wisdom. And there's no need to either create or possess wisdom because he already automatically has it. And it just doesn't make sense how this figure
certainly
could
not narratively
have
coherent.
any knowledge about anything. And to say that it does have knowledge about how the universe should be arranged once things are actually created is to say that it has prior knowledge of the actions of God, which
ridiculous.
Well, if God created wisdom like that, or if he set up wisdom like that, or maybe wisdom is an emergence. It emerges.
like one of the Sephirot.
Yeah,
an emanation from the Ein Sof. Yeah, I don't know about that. But
is it an egregore? Is it still part of God, but only in the what would they call it? Oh man, like a brain entity. The thing that makes all things through thought. It would be God's dream.
Tulpa?
Yeah.
It would be God's dream, and he would be the Godhead, and this would just be like part of his brain in the Godhead metaphysically.
Like, what was that? That wasn't Indra, was it? The one that's asleep?
I don't remember.
Oh man,
It's
been a while. No, that's.
I was thinking Chris was talking about tulpas.
Yeah,
I was thinking about something
I
like
was
that.
talking about tulpas and like Hindu mythology.
Yeah.
Because
closer to
tulpas come from Tibetan practices,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's a thing. You can give yourself schizophrenia if you want,
and you can leave your friends behind.
Yeah.
It's a dance if you want to reference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go on.
Okay. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth.
Now that's an interesting one, because if we take the initial creation story in Genesis 1, there were already depths.
There were already depths.
Yeah. So the comment here is the story of creation in Genesis 1, of course, begins with God's breath hovering over the face of the deep. So Lady Wisdom wants to take us back to the moment of her gestation that is antecedent to the beginning of creation proper.
Except God never created the depths.
Yeah, he did not.
No, never happened. Where was I? When there were no fountains abounding with water. I wonder if that includes the ones in Sheol. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth.
So I'm guessing that wisdom is just like a part of God.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, God has schizophrenia, and before he had any ability to create stuff or will to do so, he had a nervous breakdown.
No.
He made another person in his head named Wisdom.
I'm not saying God had
Why not?
schizophrenia.
Why not?
I'm saying that it's just a part of God, and this is like a way to emphasize that part of God.
Well,
Yeah, I
if
get
we
that.
want it to be congruent with the account in Genesis, then you could say something like, well, the personification of wisdom is actually a character put in to take the place of the Spirit of the Lord, which is what hovers over the deeps in Genesis.
Yeah.
Because God himself doesn't.
Yeah, this is why it's all very this is why this gets brought up in Christology a lot.
Boy.
I just don't understand how, like, you would have to have such a selective reading to read that as Jesus. Like, not only does it not make sense as, like, an
Normal.
abstract divine being in general, but, like, reading it as Jesus would require you to, like, jump through so many logical hoops that, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't think it's a valid reading.
Well, either way, gets used a lot.
Yep. Ugh. So there's no fountains, and then there's these fountains. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth, while as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree, that the waters should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth. Then I was by him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him.
So there's a lot to unpack there in Ultra's translation. And I was by him and intimate. I was his delight day after day. This line and the next are the most original and charming turn that the poet gives to his cosmogonic myth of the origins of wisdom. Before there were creatures to occupy God's attention, wisdom was his delightful and entertaining bosom companion. As Fox aptly noted, wisdom not only possesses great utility, the burden of the preceding poem, but it is fun, as, say, the scholar takes great pleasure in his research, the naturalist in discovering the intricacies of nature. So,
Wisdom also has a childhood and grows up.
Well, it doesn't look like there's a growing up.
As one brought up with him, that is what it means. Like, I was brought up with...
Or they were created at the same time. Or they manifested at the same time, whatever you want to say. But there's also, and because this is down to translation, I don't know what the Hebrew is.
Right.
Yeah, and I was by him in intimate.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Now, therefore, hearken unto me, O ye children, For blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Because wisdom is identified with
giving life and
Right.
all that stuff. So this is pretty much the same stuff we've learned from the rest of the
Right.
the chapters that we discussed.
It's really a pragmatic point of view, like William James, right? What is true to humans is that which is most useful for the long-term survival of humans, right? So that's wisdom, right? But, thinking about these lines here, this seems in pretty direct contradiction to one of the 10 Commandments, that you shall have no other gods before me. Now,
Well,
if this were God speaking directly, if it said, follow the way of the Lord, those that do not follow the way of the Lord are sinners and will find death, etc., etc., that would be one thing. But we have a personification of wisdom identified as not only separate, but coexisting with God at the beginning of creation, and which, if you don't follow its ways, not the Lord's ways, but its ways, then you're sinning, right?
I mean, basically, I think it's going after the whole idea that wisdom is, because we already hit on this before in the chapter.
Right.
Wisdom comes to those who seek it, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are trying to attain, if you're a follower of God, a devout follower of God, you will attain wisdom. I think that's the overall point there. And that will give you life.
All right. But that's the end of the chapter.
Yes, it is.
If you're
here's some
enjoying
stuff.
the stream so far, give us a like,
Share, subscribe, and
comment.
You know who you should especially share this with?
Who?
Your dogs and your cats.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody you know in quarantine.
Yep.
Of course, that's slowly ending now, even though, stuff is still going on. The numbers aren't really looking great. But either way.
My bladder's about to burst. Holy shit.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. Thing is, he should have done this beforehand, but no, he didn't. Apparently he went before he got here. Anyways, yeah. How about we hop right into chapter 9? How does that sound? Chris, would you like that?
Grr.
Okay, thanks. You're going to love it. Chapter 9. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beasts. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. So it looks like this is setting her up as a hostess, I guess, like for some sort of grand party. She has sent out her young women to call from the highest places in town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come, eat of my bread, and drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways, and live and walk in the way of insight. So it's interesting that she sets women up to call from high places in town, presumably so everyone hears. And she is inviting the simple to turn into here.
To teach him.
Yeah, probably to teach him, exactly. And then come eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Yep. And then to leave the simple ways.
Because, of course, if you're familiar with anything about Jewish ceremony and tradition.
I think they could barely hear you there.
Well, I'm right here, right?
Now
If you remember anything about Jewish ceremony and tradition, it's the drinking of wine and the eating of bread that's had at every single ritual meal with the exception of Passover, which you can't have leavened bread in. But at every single ritual meal, you have the challah, right? The challah is always had on the Sabbath. So when you drink the wine and you eat the bread, that means you are following the Sabbath tradition and you're keeping the commandments of the Lord to keep the Sabbath holy.
Yeah. Either way, let's continue here.
Yep.
Whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. So apparently there's a lot of fear that something bad will happen to you if you speak out against them.
Against who?
Like against
The
people like us.
A scoffer?
Yeah.
Psh.
Well, that and like people who, laugh at the thing or deny the thing.
Ha, that's stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. I did all of them.
Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. Yeah, you teach a man to fish, he can fish for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much the idea here, I'm guessing.
Here, this next verse is interesting.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight.
So, Holy One, the Hebrew uses the plural, holy ones, which most interpreters understand as a plural of majesty referring to God. This is not a usage conclusively visible elsewhere. And in some instances, kedoshim is an epithet for angels. The plural ending may be a scribal error.
That does seem completely plausible.
It happens frequently.
For by me your days will be multiplied, and years will be added to your life. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it.
So the sense of this seeming tautology is that wisdom is an enduring acquisition enjoyed by the wise person and benefiting those around him, whereas scoffing isolates a person in self-disgrace and confers no benefit. It should be said that this entire verse coming after the line of peroration in verse 11 looks out of place. There's a note here in Eerdmans. The meaning of verse 12 is not wholly clear, since it sets forth an uncharacteristic note of strong individualism. This may, nevertheless, be an intentional feature showing that the outcome of the choice between the two ways is ultimately a personal and individual one.
Yeah, and obviously one is meant to lead to death while the other is meant to lead to life.
Yes.
The woman Folly is loud. She is seductive and knows nothing. So now they're personifying folly.
Yeah, the portrait of two different hostesses, each eager to attract her guests, reaffirms the benefits and gains to be won by paying attention to wisdom's teaching. Together, they show the vital importance of the choices that have to be made and the ultimate consequences that they carry. Momentarily, it seems as though the figure invoked as an exemplary instance of human behavior, as in many lines of Proverbs, okay, so it seems like the figure is invoked as an exemplary instance of human behavior. But in the next verse, it's clear that, like Lady Wisdom, she is an allegorical representation of a general quality. So it is kind of like the Platonic forms.
Yeah.
Except now they're having multiple personified forms.
Yeah, so there's one of folly to contrast the one of wisdom.
Right.
I would say that in our previous reading, perhaps the Lady of the Night that was referred to frequently could also have been an attempt at a Platonic form of
The loose
lady
woman.
of the loose woman or the Lilith, even
Right,
perhaps.
right. Or the Lilith.
Well,
no, the
somebody
Lilith. The Lilith is more about like like in miscarriages and shit.
there's a lot of stuff that goes into the Lilith thing, and it's a very complicated history.
Yeah. If you want to know more about Lilith, watch Lawrence's video on Lilith.
Yeah, you could do that. That'd be cool afterwards. Did a whole thing on that. So just like wisdom, folly, it is said, she sits at the door of her house. She takes a seat on the highest places of the town, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. So obviously, this is to contrast the way of wisdom.
Right. Lady Folly's words repeat verbatim those of Lady Wisdom in verse 4, but with an opposite intent. Wisdom calls to the dupes and the thoughtless with the aim of extricating them from their hapless condition through her instruction. Folly calls to them, though in her case she would not plausibly have uttered these derogatory terms, but rather thought them, counting on the gullibility of those she addresses, because she intends to exploit their naivete.
And that is the end of chapter 9. That was a very, very short chapter.
Yeah. The word for dead is Rephaim.
Oh, okay.
Which, I think I texted you about this a while ago, about how the Rephaim referenced in the Bible may be identical with the Aliad.
Oh, yeah, you did send me a thing on that.
But it's an argument that I don't care to recall exactly here.
Yeah.
Right. That is the end of chapter 9, isn't it?
Yeah. If you guys are enjoying the stream so far, please drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, all that good stuff. And
do you hear something?
I do hear something.
I hear something quite strange.
It's really weird.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Wow. That was amazing, Jesus.
I have risen from the depths of Sheol.
Oh, there you are.
Yep. I know you couldn't see me.
So
they could see.
Let me get this straight. You followed the ways of Folly.
Yeah. I followed Folly. She led me to the depths of Sheol.
How simple of you.
We had a good time.
Did you? Okay.
She's a very loose woman. Now I'm back.
All right. So how about we hop into the next chapter here, chapter 10. This is.
How about instead of hopping into the next chapter, we recognize that we've just finished the introductory Proverbs.
Yes, and we are now getting into the Proverbs of Solomon. Now there's
let's talk about that. What is the division? Why is it there?
All right, so let's hop into this. In Proverbs 10:1, we encounter a new series of wisdom sayings carrying the title Proverbs, rather more obviously than the contents of Proverbs 1 through 9. This is because they are in the form of short epigrammatic sayings expressing a fundamental truth or two contrasted truths. A noticeable change of form is to be found commencing at 10:1, which continues with only minor variations until 29:27. The sayings are characterized by their brevity and educational value. Usually, they consist of two short lines, and they are frequently antithetical in structure. They contrast a form of good and desirable behavior with its counterpart. So one of the big things about this section is that this is all one long piece.
Mm-hmm.
So even from chapter to chapter, It's still just a continuation.
So we're actually getting into like,
A narrative.
well, more or less, at least a thematic narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does that mean that we're getting away from the Lady Wisdom language? That
Probably.
We are kind of getting away from it. It's definitely less stressed. Overall, the subject matter displays features that have been noted earlier in chapters 1 through 9, although the balance of emphasis is markedly different. These sayings exploit the possibilities of imaginative artistry, sometimes humorous and heavily exaggerated, in order to make a point. At the same time, the broad aim is ethical in its thrust, instilling a number of basic moral values and encouraging the nurture of a particular kind of personal character. These values relate especially to the preservation of the nuclear family or household, to the necessity for hard work, and to the careful accumulation and use of wealth. A good capitalist proverb this is. Along with this, the wisdom sayings emphasize the avoidance of needless conflict and stress, conflict and stress, and of arrogant and violent conduct, and urge careful and restrained use of speech. Now to talk about the origin of these sayings. The origin of these sayings, assuming that they were originally composed as independent units, is never clearly evident. They have been brought together, written down from a presumably oral original form, and set out in longer collections with little by way of obvious structural or thematic connectedness. Who their original authors were, even in broad terms, cannot be defined with precise detail and confidence. Their broad applicability and rural agricultural ambience point to a simple folk origin. However, the predominantly respectful attitude towards the king, together with a number of references to the circle of court officials, points to a link at some stage in the chain of their preservation with the royal court. And then he goes on to say a middle-class atmosphere pervades the instructions, whose authors clearly did not regard themselves as among the rich. A property-owning body of free citizens eager for a secure and happy life and respectful of the order which they saw around them must make up the circles who composed and valued such a form of teaching. They focused on the basic virtues of industry and respect for one's neighbor. They encouraged shrewdness, commercial caution, and careful speech, regarding religious devotion as a mark of wise humility and respect for a divinely created world of order.
You know, it's very strange then that they attribute it to Solomon.
Yeah, it is. But of course, we talked about this with the Psalms. We talked about this with the beginning of Proverbs also. We talked about this.
Yeah.
How these titles were given to basically like the key figures of that subject.
Right. But like, at least the Solomon that we're familiar with from the biblical story exemplifies like the opposite of the characteristics that you just listed off. Like, he's not religiously devoted. I mean, that's the whole reason he loses his wisdom, right? Because he follows the gods of his wives. And
well, the thing is, he was religiously devoted, right? Because
when he was like a teenager, like Dallas.
When he had like when he was building the temple and stuff, that was obviously very devotional.
Right.
Lots of
built
sacrifices.
a better temple for himself.
That was devotional, but respecting his neighbors. No.
What his parents?
Not being incredibly wealthy. No. Right? Like, so, I don't know. Doesn't make sense. I mean, yeah, they're going to attribute the wisdom stuff to the wisest man in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right?
So furthermore, since the proverbial wisdom teaching points directly to experience and the practical facts of life, the interspersing among the sayings of some which urge reverence for the Lord as God appears to be a relatively marginal feature. It has consequently been suggested that such positive religious references represent a kind of overlay to a form of instruction that originally stood largely apart from all such formal religious demands and assumptions. Yet clearly Israel's wisdom teaching was never secular in the modern sense, nor yet anti-religious in any explicit manner. It assumed religion to be a necessary and routine aspect of life. So, pretty much kind of what we were talking about before, about how it's just kind of goes along with it.
Right. Well, not only that, but like there are explicit references to like the actions of the wise being identical with basically the religious customs and traditions that are in place. Right. Also, I wanted to return very briefly to just the end of the previous chapter.
Oh, okay.
Where it says, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant.
Yeah.
It was delicious, and I'm not telling you.
Yeah. Alter, about this secret bread, all he says is that it's literally secret bread, right?
So it's bread that you're not sharing with anyone.
Right. It's bread that you're not sharing with anyone.
Yeah.
So it's the idea that basically, because they set
Folly
up...
would lead to greed.
Well, they set up earlier with wisdom that you eat the bread and drink the wine, right?
Yes.
So you do the standard Shabbat celebration. So does this
so you
mean...
share it?
Right. So does this mean that it's like a polemic against those who practice their religion individually instead of communally? Because we have had stuff like that before when they were decrying the high places.
Sure. But I think that was less about communal and individual. Because remember Micah's idols?
Right.
Yeah. So you have... so I don't think the polemic is against individual religion or personal religion. Household religions, maybe, is a better word to put on it. I wouldn't say it's a polemic against that. I would just say it's a polemic against being greedy.
Yeah, but I mean, the implication is that stolen waters are sweet.
Yeah.
Bread eaten in secret is pleasant. So the implication is that it's stolen bread.
Well, I don't know if it's stolen or not, but it's secret, so you're not sharing it.
Right. Well, that's the question, right? Is it stolen or not? Well, what exactly are they talking about?
The water
when
is
they
stolen.
say secret bread.
The water is stolen. That's what we can say. We can't really say it's... Because I'm just saying it's bread that you keep in secret that you don't share with anyone. Like your family.
I think that needs to be a television show.
So, like, if you buy
Secret bread?
cupcakes...
Secret bread.
You buy cupcakes and you, like, store them in the back of the vegetable shelf.
Yeah.
Right? That's wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Well... Are you done reading the introductory segment, or do you want to go over more?
One of the last things I want to note is how this collection kind of ends. An initial collection of sayings appears to have stopped at 1553, where a reaffirmation of the essential religious foundation of wisdom's teaching is made. A fresh and closely similar collection follows from 1601 and extends as far as 2216. Thereafter, further shorter collections appear to have been put together.
Next week, we should probably read through 15 then.
Yes. We will be doing that.
All right. Well, why don't I get us started then? The Proverbs of Solomon.
Yes, here they are.
A wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivereth from death. You know, I think that there's several world governments and their actions that demonstrate that treasures of wickedness do indeed profit people.
I mean, yes, but not ultimately is the point.
Right. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked.
So the summing up of evil and misfortune as constituting death reveals how closely wisdom regarded the order of right and wrong as a reality that permeated all aspects of life, because of course wisdom gives life.
Was Job righteous?
Sure.
Yes.
Well, the Lord had him suffer famine.
Yeah, but even though he wanted to, even though he has doubts, he didn't stray away from his righteousness.
No, hold on.
And then he was given more, wasn't he?
The whole reason that the tribes left Israel and went to Egypt was because there was a famine. Right?
There was a famine in Egypt. I remember
There was
that.
a famine in Egypt, right? But they wanted to do trade with Egypt, which is why they went to Egypt. And that's when Joseph made contact with his brothers again.
When he was already.
Yeah, when he was already in Egypt, because they wanted additional supplies.
Sure,
Why would they want additional supplies from Egypt? If damn it.
There are a lot of problems with things now. It wasn't so problematic earlier, but at this level of depth into the Bible, we're going to run into not only contradictions, but just narrative, confusion.
Well, the thing is, this isn't really a narrative piece.
Right, it's not a narrative
I
piece.
get that.
It's metaphorical language. It's just metaphorical language that conflicts with the narratives that we've been presented with up until this point.
And there are plenty of different philosophies, but you got to remember, it's a bunch of different authors.
Yeah.
Writing at different times.
Just supposed to, never mind.
I mean, well, that's, like I said in one of the previous weeks, how I don't think that there's really a God of the Old Testament because of how different it is between the books. Yeah. Well, even in individual books, like Proverbs, right? There's different ideas of what God is. Right?
Or how he acts.
Yeah. And...
or his likes and dislikes, I suppose.
And I suppose it would be ridiculous to expect them to consistently have the same limitations and ideas about God.
I'm just saying, when was the last time that God mentioned that he liked the smell of savory meat? Just saying.
That was a long time ago.
That was forever ago, and his tendencies have completely changed now. He's even intertwined with another person.
Yeah,
or a personified figure, I guess.
Yeah, this is just a
I know, but they're really lensing it differently. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Now, later on in this proverb, we're gonna run into some wisdom references looking forward, and I don't see any female pronouns.
Well, I got taken out at this part. I think it.
We will talk about that when we get there.
Let's continue.
Okay, we'll get to it. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. Perhaps not necessarily monetarily, but with wisdom.
Hard work.
Yeah. He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame. Okay, farming advice.
Yeah, farming advice.
Blessings are...
So hold on. What was your verse 5?
He that gathereth in summer is a wise son, but he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame.
Okay.
So someone that works the fields.
Yeah.
For their parents, presumably.
Yeah, and apparently is storing things up.
Yeah. Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. Unless you're Haman or...
Well, eventually.
Pharaoh or Hitler.
Haman lost in the end.
His name didn't rot.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And...
But his memory did.
Yeah. The memory of the just is blessed, right? The wise in heart shall receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall. He that walketh uprightly walketh surely, but he that perverteth his ways shall be known. He that winketh with the eye causeth sorrow, but a prating fool shall fall. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirreth up strifes, but love covereth all sins. Ooh, isn't that nice? I wonder how Ezra and Nehemiah felt about that.
Oh, yeah, I know how. Take a look.
Okay, he winked. That's what he did. He winked.
Sorrow.
He winked. In the lips of him that hath understanding wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life, the fruit of the wicked to sin. So we're continually getting contrasting images.
Yep.
He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction, but he that refuseth reproof erreth. So,
Hey, here, how about plain English?
yes.
A path for life. This is verse 17, right?
Yeah.
Okay. A path for life who observes reproof, but who forsakes rebuke leads astray.
Mm. He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool. Obviously, they don't believe in God, right?
I mean, not because of that, but
In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as choice silver. The heart of the wicked is little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow from it. It is as sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding hath wisdom. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. As the whirlwind passeth, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation.
so this is a bedrock assumption of Proverbs, vehemently contested by Job, that adversity sweeps away the wicked while the righteous endure. A different formulation of the same idea occurs in verse 27.
As vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him.
This verse exhibits a different and more interesting pattern from the neat antithetical parallelism that governs almost all the lines up to this point. The first verset lays out a simile, and the second verset reveals the referent of the simile. This looks rather like a riddle form. What is it that is like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, discoloring the former and making the latter smart? The answer to the riddle is a fool sent on an errand who is bound to exasperate whoever has sent him.
You know, you would think.
So you're just pissing off someone. You're like, hey, can you help me with this? And you're just,
I'm helping.
yeah, exactly. I'm helping.
So this is a line, I think, that would fit much better in the previous chapter.
Yeah, I think so, because
Yeah.
you have the whole contrast between fools and wisdom.
Yeah, as well as the wine that's presented, right? Because vinegar is just wine that's gone bad.
It's the way they got
Sure,
it most
yeah.
commonly.
Yeah. You keep vinegar, you keep wine, you don't store it properly, it becomes vinegar.
Well, that sounds
Which
like a good
is-
way to get yourself
Any
some expensive
solar
vinegar.
ionization, meaning it needs to be stored in a dark place.
Right, but that provides the opportunity for a poetic parallel, right? Because the practices of the religious community that involve the consumption, the consumption, not the consummation of wine. That serves a better contrast with vinegar. Right?
Sure, yeah.
The fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked
Hey,
shall be shortened.
remember Joshua,
Yeah,
son standing still?
yeah.
Yeah, prolongs days. Let's
Yeah.
continue.
The hope of the righteous shall be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked shall perish. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness.
Yeah, so of course their perverseness. So overall, this is from Erdman's here. Sometimes the instruction appears to imply that evil is impelled by an inner momentum toward destruction, which eventually overwhelms the wrongdoer. At other times, it argues that the wrongdoer's fellow citizens act in their own interest to bring punishment. That's verses 9 and 13. More frequently, it claims some form of divine retributive action, although how it will take effect is not made clear. The issue is not made into a formal theological proposition. Rather, it is taken for granted that retribution represents an established and recognizable feature of the real world. Whereas good actions promote health, long life, and happiness, bad ones lead to indignant opposition, punishment, and eventual ruin and death. The ways in which such retribution for wrongdoing takes effect are therefore many and various, sometimes requiring human action to enforce it, but at others leaving the punitive result to come from providential action on the part of God.
You know, when we were reading 2nd Maccabees, which we just finished.
Yeah, we did. We just finished it.
Yep. There was there were martyrs, right? And these martyrs were looked on as positive things.
Yeah, 3 different martyr stories.
Right. But here in Proverbs, there seems to be a continual identification with those things that lead to death as being unwise. Yeah. So are they saying that these martyrs in these other stories were unwise?
Well, no. Because they're talking about a spiritual death. Mm-hmm. And if you have a theology,
are they talking about a spiritual death? They seem to be using a lot of physical language.
They do, but I think with so in this whole section of at least the Proverbs of Solomon section, like was said in the commentary, it's very it exaggerates a lot, and of course they mentioned Job for example there. It doesn't really. This strikes me as a lot of rhetorical things, though. Like, it doesn't strike me as a very. This isn't as pragmatic as the last few chapters.
Mm-hmm. This next chapter that we're going to get into, there's quite a bit here in Erdman's.
Great.
But I haven't read all of it, so let me scan through it really quickly while you start getting into it.
Okay, sounds good. This is Proverbs 11. A false balance is, and it's important to note that this is like a continuation. It's not like broken up or anything. Mm-hmm. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight.
Oh, so the sayings of this chapter are, with the exception of verse 7, which displays a synthetic coupling, all couched in an antithetic form, contrasting a good with a bad mode of conduct. So this is more
just as before, yeah.
back and forth stuff.
Yeah.
It says it's not. It is a marked feature of the type of character which Proverbs seek to encourage, that it should be humble, which you're about to read in verse 2. So read verse 2, and I'll get into it.
When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom.
So this humility, by which it envisages a cautious, unaggressive, and thoughtful mode of conduct. Over against this is it condemns an arrogant, assertive, and scornful manner. Such is regarded leading to reckless, impetuous, and ill-tempered violence. It is not difficult overall to construct a portrait from Proverbs of what was considered to represent an ideal type of character, with recognizable behavioral patterns. At the same time, the authors of these sayings were sufficiently familiar with real-life persons not to expect their pupils to fit into a single mold. So, yep.
The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death.
So, also, right at the beginning there, the beginning of your verse 1, what does it say?
A false balance is an abomination to the Lord.
Okay. Alter says, cheating scales are the Lord's loathing, and a true weight stone his pleasure.
So, it's pretty much anyone who's unfair.
Right. But the cosmic weight, right? The cosmic scales, right? Those are used in other Middle Eastern traditions.
So I mean, if we're thinking
Like
about,
in the
like the feather of
Egyptians.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this one, I mean, I'm sure they had balances all around, so I don't really think it's that crazy to, like, I wouldn't make that a necessary connection. Well, although maybe it is, because, when you talk about a just weight, because of course the feather of Ma'at is the feather of justice. So that is interesting there. Maybe.
And once again, justice and righteousness get brought up with how God weighs things against the soul as well, in the apocryphal stuff that we read, Enoch.
Yeah.
He definitely said he measured by and weighted. Those were his words.
I don't remember weighting.
I do remember.
I remember
weighting.
measurements of the righteousness, but I don't think that was the same thing.
Are these measurements of the righteousness, I mean, since we're on the topic, you think those are influenced by, like, the Egyptian thing?
I don't know.
They sound correlated all though.
I mean,
anyways.
I'm not too familiar with the Canaanite traditions, right? I don't know if
Well,
there
the thing
was-
is, there might be some influence, but it would be secondary maybe, because the thing is, Canaan was a vassal state of Egypt for a very long time. That's what the Amarna letters are, pretty much. So we can gather a good bit of information from that. But I don't know if it would be a direct link.
All right.
So, anyways, the righteousness of the blameless keeps his way straight, but the wicked falls by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the treacherous are taken captive by their lust. When the wicked dies, his hope will perish, and the expectation of wealth perishes too. The righteous is delivered from trouble, and the wicked walks into it instead.
In this instance, the two verses create a miniature narrative with an almost comical didactic effect. The just man is rescued, or more precisely, extricated from a tight spot in which he was jammed, and the wicked is promptly popped into that spot. This little narrative, of course, does not readily correspond to observable reality.
Yeah. Although I think when they're talking about deliverance, at least later on in the traditions, that did become like an eventual, like resurrection type of thing. So it really boils down to whether or not the authors of this, believed in a kind of mass resurrection. Anyways, or of the righteous, I should say.
Well, they might very well believe in a mass resurrection, depending on when it's written.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard to say. So, anyways, with his mouth, the godless man would destroy his neighbor. You guys ready to destroy our neighbors?
With only our mouths.
Chris, you are my neighbor. Kind of. You live close.
It's close enough.
I will destroy you.
With your mouth?
Yes.
That's what she said.
Mouth fight begin.
I will destroy you. Anyway.
Yeah, the patrons can get the uncut video.
Anyways, yeah, destroying his neighbor. But by knowledge, the righteous are delivered. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. And when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. By the blessing of the upright a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is overthrown. Well, damn.
Yeah. So another major wisdom theme that appears in these sentence instructions concerns the marked difference between the respective situations of the rich and the poor. So those who have great cities. And we're going to be getting more into that later on.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get into it now because there's a lot in Erdman's.
Yeah.
Right. So rich and poor. Wealth and poverty are seen to create great distinctions, not only of health and happiness, but also in forming attitudes and shaping conduct. In spite of the strong emphasis placed on the teachers of wisdom on hard work, frugality, and cautious use of wealth and property, the sayings display a prominent assumption that the rich were closely allied to the wicked. Wealth is often assumed to have been acquired by oppressive means, and even when this was not the case, it is taken as normal that the rich would be strongly inclined to exploit the power which their wealth brought to them. They would be tempted to trust in its power and to regard it as a security against life's uncertainties. Right? Nevertheless, the book generally accepts the fact that that whether a person was rich or poor marked a major, if sometimes inexplicable, distinguishing feature of society. A real measure of tension exists between the guarded and sometimes openly hostile references to wealthier citizens whose wealth is regarded as endangering their moral and spiritual well-being, and the repeated assurances that the path of wisdom was the way to success and prosperity. The differences between the rich and poor are to be seen as the result of God's inscrutable will, but they are not allowed to overrule recognition that a common destiny is shared by both. Even the poorest citizen is a creation of God who must be respected, so the rich had a responsibility to act generously towards those who are not fortunate.
Yeah, so like there is this contrast between rich and poor, but ultimately it all boils down to moral stuff.
Yeah, and in the coming verses, we're going to see that they're pretty explicitly told not to exploit their power.
Yeah.
Right.
So, anyways, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. So by remains silent, I'm guessing it means they want to say something about how shitty their neighbor is, but they're not going to say their neighbor's shitty. That would be rude.
Or even...
Oh, yeah.
If you have nothing nice to say,
they could take advantage of a situation but decide not to. They just remain silent. I think that's
that also, yeah. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets. Well, if it's slander, it's not a secret, right? Because slander is things that are false.
Right.
Anyways, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. Where there is no guidance, a people falls. But in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. Whoever...
a people falls. Some construe the Hebrew am here in the military sense that it sometimes has in the narrative prose, which can mean troops. In that case, rescue, teshua, in the second verse, it would reflect its related meaning of victory.
Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer harm. But he who hates striking hands in pledge is secure. A gracious woman gets honor, and violent men get riches. You know, it's interesting that this is like the first, like I get that they're drawing the parallel between women and men here, and gracious and violent, but it's interesting that this verse actually has the gracious woman and the violent men, because
the violent man. No, it says a gracious woman holds fast to honor, but the arrogant man holds fast to wealth and altars.
Interesting. But either way, this is drawing a contrast, but the point I was getting to was that the woman here is the positive one,
right? As
opposed to, I mean, while wisdom herself, as the personification, was viewed very positively. If you go read all the stuff on adultery from 5 through 7, Oof.
Yeah.
That was oof.
Yeah, but this honor and wealth parallel elsewhere in Proverbs, these are coordinated terms, not antitheses.
Okay. A man who is kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. The wicked earns deceptive wages, but one who sows righteousness gets a sure reward. Whoever is steadfast in righteousness will live, but he who pursues evil will die. So verse 18, the one about the wicked earns deceptive wages.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any commentary on that? Because I'm guessing it's somebody.
The wicked man makes a false prophet, but who sows righteousness reaps true reward.
Okay, that makes way more sense because a deceptive wage is just a weird way of wording it.
Mm-hmm. This next verse, it has a bit. So,
those of crooked heart are an abomination to the Lord, but those of blameless ways are his delight.
Or the previous verse to that. A righteous son is for life, but the pursuer of evil for his death.
Oh, that's interesting that yours says son, because I just have whoever is steadfast in righteousness will live, but he who pursues evil will die.
Well, the Masoretic text reads, Ken Tzedakah, thus righteousness instead of a righteous son, which doesn't make much sense and produces a poor parallelism with the second verse in the series of Proverbs, where the parallelism is usually neat, even pat. This translation adopts a reading shown in some Hebrew manuscripts, as well as in the Septuagint and Syriac, Ben Tzedakah, literally sons of righteousness.
Okay. So yeah, those of crooked heart are an abomination to the Lord, but those of blameless ways are his delight. Be assured, an evil person will not go unpunished, but the offspring of the righteous will be delivered. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout, that's a weird one, is a beautiful woman without discretion. Wait, what? Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion.
Yes, this is another proverb cast in riddle form. This first verse, it gives us a bizarre and rather shocking image. The second verse, it spells out the referent of the image. The beautiful woman devoid of sense thus becomes a kind of punchline.
Wow, okay. The desire of the righteous ends only in good.
Oh, there's also an Eerdmans here.
Okay, good.
Verse 22.
Yes.
Expresses this contrast by warning against being deceived by feminine beauty and charm where discretion is lacking. The two sayings, like virtually all the instructions of Proverbs, reflect consistently the male viewpoint of the authors and indicate a corresponding expectation of a predominantly male readership. The perspective adopted is that of woman observed and points to a situation in which the major decisions affecting households and their security were in the hands of its male members. Even the celebrated portraits in praise of a virtuous wife and mother does not essentially depart from this perspective. The result is that whereas a reasonably clear and generally commendable portrait is offered of the ideal type of male character, that of the good woman is largely colorless and utilitarian.
Yeah. The desire of the righteous ends only in good, the expectation of the wicked in wrath.
Although this clause makes a certain amount of sense as it stands in the Masoretic text, many scholars adopt the reading of some manuscripts and of the Septuagint of da perishes instead of evra, wrath. This would bring the verse in the line with 1028b, which has nearly identical wording.
1028b, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. Okay.
Yeah.
One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Just like Mr. Beast. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters himself will be watered. Wow. Thanks for that tautology.
Well, God helps those who help themselves.
Yes, of course. The people curse him who holds back grain, but a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. So yeah, that's what I was saying before about the greed and like the secret
Well,
bread.
both of these terms recall the story of Joseph as viceroy of Egypt, providing grain in the famine.
That's true, yeah. Whoever diligently seeks good seeks favor, but evil comes to him who searches for it. Whoever trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf.
So some prefer to read instead of the Masoretic yipol, a verb differing by one consonant, yibol, he will wither, which produces a neater antithesis to the burgeoning leaf in the second verset.
Whoever troubles his own household will inherit the wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise of heart. So whoever troubles his own household will inherit the wind?
Nothing. You'll inherit almost nothing.
That's weird.
He'll inherit air. You
Okay,
have
so
nothing of value.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. There's that tree of life imagery again. And whoever captures souls is wise. I'm guessing that means convinces people, not literally captures souls.
Yeah, Alter says,
Oops, I better let those guys go.
And the wise man draws in people. But about
Yeah.
this fruit bit, he says, it is a little problematic that the fruit becomes tree, but perhaps the poet was drawn into a certain slackness because fruit in biblical usage is so often a lexicalized metaphor for consequences, what one produces through his acts.
Sure. If the righteous is repaid on earth, how much more the wicked and the sinner?
That is the end of
Yes, it is.
what we're reading today.
Yeah, that's the end of the chapters. That's the end of 11 there.
Yeah. Hey, if you've enjoyed the stream today, give us a like. Check us out on Patreon, on Facebook,
hey.
on Twitter.
Make sure you share. You'll drop a like because that actually really helps us. You have no idea. And subscribe if you haven't because you know what? That helps us too. Let's see what.
Tell Mr. Beast that we exist. He used to care about YouTubers.
Thanks to those who have sent in books recently.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. We've gotten more books on angels and demons.
Yeah,
and
and you know what? If you want to add more books to our library or this table here, some of them are out of view, but we have a lot of books everywhere. So if you would like to add to that collection of books and have more information for you, more commentaries for you, more content for you, you can feel free to go onto our Amazon wish list. Link is in the description, and you could pick up a book or two.
Yeah.
Why not? Because it's just books on there. Really, anything is appreciated. Let's see what else we got going on. We got Patreon.
Yep. $1 will get you all our scripts. $10 will get you into a monthly T-shirt giveaway. $20 will, or was it 20 or 25?
It's 20.
It's 20. $20 will get you more shit.
Yeah, you get to join us for our patron hangouts.
Yeah.
You get to once we have events, you can come for free.
And for $50 a month, you can get on either this show or our Friday show once a month.
Yep. And then, of course, the $5 reward, a very popular one that we have. You get all the books that we publish.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of which there is one.
Currently one, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? Just as soon as we get done with another one, all the $5 patrons will be getting that book.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then I think there's a couple more rewards on there.
Yeah, but, you can also check out our Teespring if you want a wacky and fun T-shirt. And if you have no money, then just check us out on Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah, it's free to follow us on there, and all the links are, in fact, in the description.
Or Nightbot sometimes.
Sometimes Nightbot. If there are enough people in the chat, Nightbot will pop up. Yeah. Either way.
And our donation drive.
Yes, our donation drive. So we have to kind of wait for the for all this virus shit to kind of end before we go out to some of the local stores, science stores, and do stuff for alchemy. But because that's the last one that we had, the alchemy drive.
Yeah. Luckily, some places in the state have started opening up.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
not all of them.
Probably not science surplus stores.
Yeah, probably not.
Like tier 5. Ooh, we never get there.
But either way, we are currently running a donation drive. So
Once we hit $666 in donations, we're going to get ourselves a thetan meter. We're going to see who's the most clear, and we're going to take that sucker apart and tell you how it works.
yeah, that's exactly. And we're gonna see if we can manipulate it, and that'd be cool to see if we can fudge the numbers, because then we could go into like a Church of Scientology and be like, hey, check
what
out
information
this.
should you share with us if we're clear?
We could install a clear switch, like on the bottom, right? So we could switch it to clear.
We could
while
make a device. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we use it, we can be clear, and we can hand it to them. And when they use
switch it off. Yeah.
it'll be full of thetans.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, with like a pocket one.
Oh man, yeah. Just send out EM signals that are like perfect for clear, and then when someone else tries it, it's like, you're just not lucky, dude. Oh, you got all these thetans.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Dope. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna see what kind of stuff we can do with that, because that sounds fun. Checking how clear we are.
Hail Xenu.
Hail Xenu. Either way, that is the end of the show for today. All that stuff we said earlier, obviously.
Yep.
And I hope you
check
enjoyed
us
it.
out on Fridays too.
Yeah, we
and
have our Friday
on
show.
Sunday. And
We are here for you during quarantine. You know who's always here for you during quarantine? It's us. We are.
Yep. We're the most consistent Bible study in the world. We're the best. Nobody else comes even close.
Nowhere near close.
Yep. The thing is, though, I was in an argument earlier, and most Bible studies. Thank you, Ellis.
Thank you for the $9.99,
Thank
Ellis.
you very much.
Fantastic. Ellis is great.
But most
Was that the
Bible
clap or the
studies,
clap? I hope that was the clap.
most religious organizations,
That was a laugh, actually.
most
Damn it.
churches
There you go.
and temples, they don't go into that much. They're, like I was saying before about the Logos thing and Christology among modern Christians,
Yeah.
right, is that they don't go into very much depth.
Yeah. If you're going to seminary, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But because
But-
they actually have really.
Ruben, why don't you tell the audience that you made it into a school? You don't have to tell them which one.
Oh, yeah, I made it into a school.
Congratulations. And it'll be
thanks.
about what we're studying. Some more.
I guess, maybe vaguely.
You don't have a choice on that. It's kind of the type of school.
Okay.
It's a religious school.
It is a religious school.
I mean,
yeah.
That's
but
it.
that doesn't impact the program. There's
No,
no
but it
religious
will
aspect to the
willingly
program.
or unwillingly
And
help
it's
you.
Unlikely that, all the professors are practicing Christians.
Well, I'm
like if you go to Marquette, their professors aren't
No,
Christians.
they're not.
yeah. That's true.
It's a Catholic institution.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, if you go there for learning about Catholicism, certainly there'll be Catholics and you'll be with Catholics. But if you're not, Marquette is pretty secular. I went
Yeah,
to a
yeah.
couple
But
I'm not going to
extended
Marquette
education.
Right.
also.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Please don't stalk me.
Actually, you know what? Feel free to go to Marquette. Try to find him there.
Yeah, try to find me at Marquette.
Go look for him there.
Cash me on Marquette. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you on Friday or Sunday.
the
We will
weekend.
See you on the weekend.
See you on the